Hey, it's the Chief bonding with board games and RPGs, but mostly board games we'll be talking about today with Jason Carr from GMT Games. Hello, sir.
Hey, thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
love having you on anytime, anywhere. Well, virtually, we'll have you on. I love your poster in the background, by the way. Love the Star Wars,
Yeah,
of
I
course.
I went for the vintage look. I was torn between a bunch of different ones because some of the new ones look really cool, but
Sure.
you just can't beat that. You can't beat the original, right?
Nope. Nope. The 70s were great. I love Empire in the 80s as well.
Yeah,
Um, Speaking of great things, one of the things we're going to focus on and we can open up with is you've been on this convention tour. Do you
yeah.
want
This
to kind
year,
of take us through?
sure. Yeah, this year's been crazy. So since last October, so basically since a year ago, I did the weekend at the warehouse in October, and then I went to uh, San Diego Historical Games Convention,
Okay.
and then that was great, by the way. If for your like
Yeah, I
viewers
haven't
who
been
have
to that.
not done that, I
Yeah,
recommend it. It's in San Diego, which is hard to beat.
yeah.
The last location was right on the water. I don't know if they're doing it at the same place. I hope they are. It was a really good venue, and it is all historical games. I mean,
Really?
there were people playing Hex Encounter, and there were people playing prototypes of stuff that hasn't even come out that was really nouveau and kind of different. So
Mm,
um, we probably the highlight of that was I got to meet Matthias Kramer, who is the designer of Watergate, and he has a game on the Weimar Republic, and is a classic Eurogamer. Glenmore is one of his designs,
okay.
and just his the way his mind works when it comes to games is great. And so obviously we have a game that we picked up from him, which he demoed to us at that convention called Lenin's Legacy, which is a two-player card game that's sort of a tableau drafting game. So there's a bunch of cards out on the table and you're drafting and you can see all the cards, almost all the cards. And so you are trying to simultaneously do the best thing for you and deny your opponent at the same time.
Mm,
And it's the battle between Stalin and Trotsky after Lenin dies.
okay.
So or as he's dying. It's really cool. So
Oh,
that was the highlight of my fall for sure, was getting to meet Matthias and his wife and get pitched this game. Um, so that was fun.
cool.
Then in the spring, I had the opportunity to go to Fort Circle's convention. So Fort Circle is the publisher for Shores of Tripoli, Votes for Women, Halls of Montezuma coming up. And Kevin, the owner, Kevin Bertram, is just a really chill dude who runs this convention every spring in Washington, D.C. And I had never been to Washington, D.C. So this was like, cool. I can get a twofer. I can go to the Smithsonian's and I can
Yes.
also go do this game convention.
Yep. Love
Um,
the Smithsonian.
yeah. So that was awesome. And there were tons of GMT folks there. Ben Hall came out, Volka was there, Mark Herman was there. And so it's Fort Circle's convention, but it kind of felt like a GMT takeover,
Sure.
which we were all about. And uh, got to hang out with Jason Matthews a bunch there too.
Okay.
And the big highlights there, I think there are probably three things. First was I brought my pre-production copy of Just of Robin Hood, our
Yes.
two-player Robin Hood coin adjacent game. That was just played constantly the
Mm,
whole convention. Somebody was always sitting and playing and learning how to play. Some of the people who were there were play testers, so they would sit down with other people and teach them, which was great for my
nice.
workload.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, that game has sold out. So it came out
Yeah, I saw that it's
earlier.
already up for
Yeah.
its second reprint on the P500.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll break the news for your viewers. We're not waiting on orders for that one. That one's too hot. So we're going to print it right now. So
Yeah.
by the end of the year, I think right around the end of the year, hopefully before Christmas, right? That would be great. We should have more of that in stock. So if
Yeah, I think
you,
I even saw when I looked, it's already at the printer, but it only showed like, I don't know, 59 or something pre orders. So it was clear that you guys had put it right back into the hopper.
I mean, that game's been selling. So my local game store carries GMT games, and the owner of the store said that he got some Just of Robin Hood and it immediately sold out. So he ordered more, and I was over there. He has one left,
Hmm,
and then he's got another pre-order in to replace what he sold, but the distributor doesn't have any. And so when we get a game that's hot like that, we can reach out to distributors and say, hey, are you interested in another printing of this? And they said yes. So
got it.
that made it really easy for us to turn around and do another printing. That's the traditional way that games have been printed for a long time. So
You still there? We had a
yeah,
glitcher.
looks like a little hiccup in the pipes there, but
Yep.
that's how they've done game printing for a long time, is just talk to distributors and see what they want. So sometimes when we get a really good game, that's a way for us to get it going faster. So
Well, that's
that was cool. That was cool. And then, the other big things at that convention at Circle, which again, if you're on the East Coast, this is a tremendous convention. I highly recommend going. Joe Dewhurst flew in from Scotland. So Joe is one of my staff developers.
wow.
He developed Just of Robin Hood and a bunch of other projects. So getting to meet him face to face was awesome. And then Jason Matthews and I sat and worked on Twilight Struggle South Asian Monsoon for a
Ooh.
while, our upcoming Twilight Struggle game, and got some of the folks there who have much more personal ties to that history to sit down and play the game with us and give us feedback. And it was really awesome to watch them play and process and think about this and then say, you might want to think about this, or you left this out and it's really important to the people who live here. Or in a lot of cases, just like, wow, this is really insightful. This feels right. And that was awesome. So those conversations continue.
Hmm.
Building those relationships sometimes can be the most valuable part of going to one of these
Yeah.
things. So that was really cool.
Quick question on Jest of Robin Hood. The name with Jest, I actually even wondered when I saw it, like, is that almost like guest? Or, I mean, what does that name iterate from?
Yeah, it's the Old English. So a
Okay.
jest, if you think about like a jester,
Yes.
they made light of something. They sang a song. It
100%.
really just kind of means ballad, but it's the Old English word for it. So you get, a jest of Robin Hood. We thought it was a fun tie-in to to like where it came from, right?
Sure.
And
So right
the
off
other
from
interesting
Jester.
thing, yeah, absolutely. The other interesting thing about that game is, Robin Hood's not a historical person, right? But we wanted the game to honor Fred. Really, I wasn't that involved. Wanted the game to honor the history of the legends of Robin Hood. So like our external changing of the story to suit the times over 600, 700, 800 years. So there's references from everything from the very first Robin Hood stories all the way to like Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Okay. Wow.
So if you look at the cover, there's a Moorish guy on the cover, and that's a reference to Morgan Freeman's, character in Men in Tights. So there's this whole broad range of Robin Hood represented in that box. That's what makes it so much fun. So you might play it, and you might have Kevin Costner in your head, and I might play it, and I might have Disney's Robin Hood in my head, and they're both right. They're both valid. It's really cool.
Well,
So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So then in June, so then in April, we had another weekend at the warehouse. So for folks who are on the West Coast, every 6 months in April and October, we all get together at the warehouse in Hanford, California. Breadbasket of the United States right there. It's great. And we play games for 4 days, and it's really not like anything else that I've ever been to. It's not a convention. There's no schedule. It's just open gaming. But that's where you'll see people drag out, Total or Krieg and set it up on Thursday and play until Sunday afternoon. You'll see a lot of prototypes, a lot of designers show up there and bring stuff that they have going on. Mike, hey Mike, how you doing? Mike's always there. You can come see what he's working on. He's doing fun stuff all the time. And yeah, we have a really good time there. So I think this last time around, Mike was showing off Wolfpack, and we had Jerry White there with a couple new games that he was looking at. I brought a bunch of prototypes. Sam London, who you had on, Sam has 6,000 games he's designing at any given time. I was going to say
he's like lightning in a bottle. Just all
so true. He can't be stopped. He can only be contained. I was joking with my wife that he's like 1994 Michael Jordan. Like, just don't get in his way. It's going to end badly. So he brought a ton of stuff. He was showing off Firefight Tactical. He was showing off this upcoming space 4X game, light 4X game that is tremendous called Microverse.
Yeah, he brought that up. I think he even said that was like his first big design. Maybe, I can't remember when I talked, but that was just what grabbed him for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand why. if anybody has ever wanted to have a 4X game that you can really actually play in 20 minutes per player, that's it. You can play a 4-player game in less than 90 minutes and get the full 4X experience. It's awesome. It's really fun. The best way I can describe it is it's like a 4X version of Cosmic Encounter. It's super fun. So, and then, you know, that whole weekend is always full of meetings with designers. The best part, Gene says this all the time, we like games, but we love people. The best part is getting to see all the people. I just love all of these folks. They become my friends. And so working with them on games is heaven. It's great. It's the best.
Yeah.
And then in June, I got to go to Origins. So Origins Game Fair in Columbus. That's my old stopping grounds. My mom still lives in my mom still lives in Origins. My mom still lives in Columbus.
Well, her origins are in Columbus.
That's right. My mom lives there. My brother and his wife and kids live there. So it was great to get out, get together. Family took all the kids, 4 kids in a minivan all the way across the country. I live in Colorado, so that was like nice long drive. But got to teach people a bunch of games, sat with the Armchair Dragoons guys who are doing great work keeping wargaming alive at Origins. For people who think wargaming left Origins, that is not true. Those guys have been there this whole time. What was really cool was walking around open gaming and watching what was being played. There were people playing Mark Simonich's U.S. Civil War on one table, and the table next to them was King of Tokyo. And it was fun to see the contrast, and there was nobody going, oh, you don't belong here or you don't belong here. It was totally mutual admiration, just different games. So I got to walk around and look at stuff from a couple guys brought stuff to show me. And so we met in the open gaming tables and just set it up and played. And then I spent a lot of time walking around and just talking to people who I saw playing GMT stuff. So I saw people playing Just a Robin Hood. I saw people playing Salerno 43. I saw a couple people playing Time of Crisis. Someone set up a Fire in the Lake campaign that started with Sovereign of Discord and went all the way to the end, Follow Saigon. They played the whole thing in one long 14-hour day. Wow. And it was just a great time. So yeah, for those people in the Midwest, wargaming at Origins is far from dead. And so next year, I think we're going to work to have more events on the calendar there and do more, TBD, keep your eyes open. We don't need nothing set in stone, but we would love to be there and be not as a booth, but as people showing our games and teaching our games and letting people actually play. Because isn't that the point? Like, we can talk about going to a convention and having a booth and having a presence and all that, but that's not playing the games. And that's what we really want to do, is go and play the games. So, and then, now here we are kind of in the summer, and I went down to Tempe, Arizona, 116 degrees in mid-July, and went to Consim World Expo, which was a blast. Never been before. So that was my first time to Consim World. Okay. Saw some familiar faces there, saw some folks that I had seen at some of the other stops on the way, but it was a lot of fun, and I got to meet some of the folks who work on our bigger Hex and Counter games who I'd never met before. I met Dick Whitaker and Bill Byrne and Alan Dickerson from the GBACW team, and the work they're doing is just fantastic. Met Ike Eichert, who's working on the Thunder in the East series. I can't remember what that's actually called, but from Frank Chadwick, which, that's just the work that's been done there by that team. Alan, Emmerich, and Ike and Frank is awesome. It's awesome stuff. And so, and so many more people I should name. Like, I've missed people through all of this, and I'm sorry to whoever I missed, but that was just a blast. Probably the highlight for me was about a week before I went to Consim World, I got my advanced copy of Red Dust Rebellion. So this bad boy right here.
I'll get you
can get that up there.
Yeah.
Bam, so, yeah, it looks great. It turned out awesome. We're so happy with this. You can see here kind of the spread of the bits. Did some new stuff with this game. So all the pieces in here are silk screened instead of embossed like normal coin games. So what that's going to do is it let us put a lot more detail on the pieces. So the symbols pop a little bit more. There's more detail in them. We just couldn't get the detail we wanted with embossing.
Okay.
The artwork is all custom. It's all commissioned just for this game. So when you open it up and look, you're not going to see anything in there that you've seen before. It's all new. And all of the artwork tells a story. So there's a history of Mars in this fictional universe written in the playbook. And every card has historical notes, right? And those historical notes tie the whole story together, so you can kind of understand the motivations behind the game factions. And then one thing that people will notice if they're paying attention is that there's some characters who reappear on some of these cards and then disappear and then come back later. That is important. That is something that the designer wanted originally the game to have, these leaders and a module for modular setup. And we ended up taking that out because it was just too much for the game. I mean, the game is already packed with stuff.
Right.
People are going to be in awe, I think, of how much this game does. But we never forgot that. And so when we were working on the art, when Jay was writing up the art briefs, he went out of his way to say, there's a character here that I want you to make sure to have because I want to do an expansion someday. And I want this character to be in that expansion and I want it to be tied together. And so that's an interesting thing that we do organically with historical games. If I make a game about Vietnam, I have the people who were involved. And if I make an expansion, well, the people are naturally there because I told the story of the history. But in a fictional history, it's really hard to be that consistent. And I just really loved that Jay was thinking that way, that he was thinking about, oh man, these people, there's people here. There's actual historical leaders. I want to show them so that there's hooks for the world. And then maybe we get to reuse them later. And so, we'll see if that ever happens, if he actually wants to do an expansion, but it's
sure.
there if he wants it.
It's set like 200 years or 300 years from now, right?
Yeah. It's set in the 25th century, I think.
Yes. Okay. I remember.
So it's,
And I knew it was in the art development phase for a very long time, probably because what you just said, all the new art.
Yeah, 23rd century. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, it takes a long time to get all that art done. So there were like about 50 unique illustrations that we commissioned for the game. And when you have an artist that does that and you want them all to have consistency where they all look the same, that artist can only work so fast.
Right.
And so they may say, oh, I can get you 2 illustrations a week, or I can get you 4 illustrations a week, depending on their style and how they work. And so, yeah, it takes a long time. And one of the really interesting things was with playtesting feedback. When we first put the game out there with no illustrations, with blank cards, basically, we got some feedback from people that they were like, yeah, I don't know if I understand the theme very well. Well, as soon as we put that artwork on the card, it all changed. People were like, oh my gosh, like the theme is so clear. Okay. And so art is not something that you can just overlook in the process. It is something that you have to get feedback on. You have to integrate it and then you have to do testing with that artwork in order to understand how people are going to look at the game. So that was an eye opener for me. I did not really expect that. And it was cool. It's been cool to put it on the table. At Consim World, we played, myself and Kai Jensen played with a couple other people. Meeple Lady was one of them. And we had a blast and people kept stopping by, and I think there were 2 things going on. One is anytime there's a table of people playing a game and they're having a really good time, everybody wants to come see what's going on. So, the next morning we played Tank Duel. And I don't know if you've ever played Tank Duel, but it's like, it's a riot. When you play Tank Duel, everybody knows you are playing Tank Duel. And
it's like World of Tanks with cars.
Exactly. Yes. Mike would be thrilled that you said that. And so, we're playing back there and somebody has a +4 to hit, and all they need to do is not draw a bounce. So guess what they drew? A bounce. And so we're shouting and having a great time. People are coming back. They're like, what are you playing? Why am I not playing this? And it was same for Red Dust Rebellion. We just had a big raucous table, and we would pull a card and we'd talk about the event, and then we'd laugh when somebody screwed up. And so, that, look, hey, your channel bonding with board games, right? Like that's literally what was going on. Was we were all like really enjoying being together at the table. So that's what we hope Red Dust Rebellion is going to do, is that it's going to bring people to the table. They're going to play together. They're going to have a great time with it. And I think they will. So
got it.
Yeah, well, yeah, so that's been my year. Been
art
crazy.
With all the presentation on the table will even just draw folks in, just because
that's what we're hoping. That's why we spent the money on it. It's not cheap to make a game like that, but we really hope that it takes it to that next level and that people really enjoy it.
Got it. Yeah, that's a whirlwind. You've been all over.
Yes, sir. And then I got the weekend at the warehouse in October. So but that's going to be it for me for a while. I gotta be at home. I gotta rest up, and like I hinted, I've got 4 kids, so
Yes, I
um, I
know.
tell I've been telling people I've got 1 house, 2 jobs, 4 kids, 8 hobbies, and God help me when I figure out what I have 16 of.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Because I'll run into that same problem, or even like this morning, it's been so hot, and then we had so much rain, and then if anybody hears, I got to say, you may hear mowers in the background because everybody came out, and I was like, I know the neighbors know I need to do that as well, but it will not happen until you and I are done.
There
So,
we
but if
go. I
anybody
love
hears
it.
mowing,
Priorities.
yeah, that's what's going on. Very cool. Yeah, yeah. So your guys, I mean, the things that are in that P500 pipeline, it's just fun even scrolling through, and then as well as you guys do showing like this is what's like about ready to ship. I know Red Dust is supposed to be what, like 2-3 weeks. It's going to start
It,
shipping.
it should be in the warehouse in a couple weeks, and then we charge it, which takes time,
Right.
and start prepping it for shipment. But I'm thinking we're like within 6 weeks of it
Yeah.
starting to ship out. It's definitely the next shipment is going to include Red Dust Rebellion.
Because I'm going to butcher the pronunciation again, but in 2021, I pre-ordered Comancheria. I'm going to say it wrong again. My wife.
Comancheria. I got you. I got
Comancheria.
you. Comancheria.
Comancheria. Thank you. Yes, I
Yep,
got the
that one.
notification that it's charging, and I was like, yes.
Yeah,
So
that's going to be great. Really, I mean, Joel's games are great, and again, Mike was the developer for that, and it just turned out so good.
yeah.
That's a evergreen for me. I play that one at least once a year,
Hmm.
because it's so much fun. And again, that's one of those games where if you like playing solitaire games, um, that's a great solitaire game. But it's even more fun cooperatively. There is a
Really?
2-player mode in the box, but
Okay.
I mean, you can also just play it cooperatively. The decision space is big enough that two
Hmm.
brains are probably
Yeah.
better than one.
Yeah.
Um, so I
And you,
love doing that with my
and you
kids
guys
or with my
redid
friends.
the box art. The box art is
Yeah,
new from the old.
yeah, it's really great illustration.
Yeah, it looks wonderful.
We do try to refresh our boxes every so often. That's mostly just us trying to keep current.
Okay.
Give something a little fresh. So the Space Empires boxes all got a little bit of a refresh. The Talon box got a little bit of a refresh, and that's
Yeah.
just keeping with the times and the current look and feel of what's in the market.
Yeah.
And we think that that adds a little bit of allure to it. I
Sure.
hope a couple people at least looked at that box and thought, man, I
Yeah.
should
What's
I should get
this?
one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got Mark Herman's book is in the order, so that'll
Yeah,
come
Mark
through.
Herman's book.
So
For
yeah,
those
I
of
know.
for those of you who can't get enough of Mark Herman's opinions, we've got it in book form now. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, that you actually call out something interesting here is that we've had a little bit of a choke point getting to the printer for a
Hmm.
while, and that's been something that's been one of my big focuses in the last 18 months is how do we get things through the printer faster and maintain our quality, because I
Hmm.
think our quality has gotten better.
Yes.
Um, we don't ever want the perfect to be the enemy of the good, and we make complex games, so there's
Yeah.
always going to be stuff that we could have done better, but we also want to make sure you guys actually get the games that you want. And so that tension is always going to be front and center, right? Mr. President, right? Perfect example. Like,
Huge.
great game, super fun,
I can barely pick it up to bring it over here.
and super, by the way, entirely playable. But there's some stuff we wish we would have done a little bit differently that we're doing in the second printing. So, learning from what you've done in the past is all what we're all about. But the last year we've really focused on how do we get things printed faster, um, how do we make things get to the printer on a more regular cadence. And
Okay.
so you'll probably see the second half of this year like a more steady march to the printer, and that's the result of a lot of hard work from the team behind the scenes with Kai and Justin Martinez, our art director,
Hmm.
and Joe Dewhurst and myself to streamline that process. And we've built a team. I mean, one of the really big things is I have a limited number of hours in my day,
Right.
and I can only do so much. But if I can build a team that can run even when I'm not there, that becomes a big lever for making things happen faster. So that's what we've been focused on,
Hmm.
and it's paying off. It's paying off this year.
100%. Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. And I was even saying that I think your queue is good when I look at the volume that GMT does. And when you're seeing those marching, it's almost like they're marching towards the print line. And I know how difficult art can be. Um, I mean, it's just, and you're talking about even improving it. So that's really because your quality, GMT quality, the boxes are great. The art is phenomenal. I mean, um, you will do the fixes even like Mr. President. I know I just saw, I picked up the counter, the new counter print, which added some extra counters. And then I haven't grabbed that second, what it's like extra books that have some errata that's in it. And it
Yeah,
made it,
we're doing a reprint. It's sold out, and when we did the
yes,
reprint, we had a choice. We could have just turned and burned on it and done it again. It's a completely playable product in the box.
yes,
Just entirely playable.
yeah,
We decided to slow down and to make a couple changes, and one of those changes is for difficulty. So there's some people who find the game too easy to win. Um, that's not a universal feeling, but some people feel that way.
yeah. Like the
Um,
third year, you guys made it
yeah,
more difficult or something.
right. And so we're making some changes to the difficulty, and then we're cleaning up a little bit because that game is so big. It's
Oh,
so big, and
book
and
after book.
it was just really hard to get the consistency that we wanted across everything. So now we have a second pass through. Marco Putre, who's one of my developers, he designed Prelude to Rebellion for Compass Games, and that he's the originator of that series. He has been just an invaluable asset to getting that done, and his attention to detail is second to none. So the emails that he sends back and forth with Gene are hysterical for me to read because they are so detailed and so specific, and he's so good at wrangling all of that. So I'm really excited about the second printing of that. Actually, what that does is having people like Marco lets me focus on other projects. So I have two things that I've been working on that have been, I know you want to talk about, that have been really important for GMT. One of them is the expansion for Plum Island Horror.
Yep.
So I'm working on the More of a Bad Thing expansion with Herman, and we just sent that last week. We sent one of the scenarios out to testers. It's called "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning," and it's a 3-turn scenario that starts at the beginning. You play 3 turns and you tally up victory points and see if you won. And it's intended for people who want to be able to play the game in like an hour to have something to put on the table. And the feedback from playtesters has been great. There's some stuff to improve. We're at that phase where we're polishing and making it better. But overall, just the expansion has had tremendous feedback from testers, both the increase in difficulty for the game and the new added things that are going to make the game different. The new factions, the new cards, those things are still need to be fully tested, but so far have been received very well.
Good.
So that has been a lot of fun to work on. I love getting my hands dirty with projects like that. So that's been fun. The second project that I'm kind of developing right now, or leading development for right now, is Away Team by John Butterfield. And that testing that is going to be amazing. So I think this. I think John came on and talked about this, but the game has a story.
Yes.
And the story of the game is kind of it's got spoilers in it. So you can play it many times and you will experience the game differently every time you play it. But the first time you play it, you're going to learn some stuff. And that would change how you play the game if you played it again. And that story, we don't want to spoil it for all the people who test the game. So we had to come up with a way to compartmentalize the testing. And so what we're doing for testing is we're going to put a call for playtesters out either this month or next month. And those people are going to get the tutorial. So Kai wrote a tutorial that is like a in-universe introduction to the system. And the idea there that we've kind of developed it into is you're doing your final evaluation as a potential mission commander, right? This is your last training exercise before you launch off with the Pandora, and so it introduces everything about the game.
Okay.
So we're going to give that to testers. Well, that will let them not only go through the tutorial and make sure it's good, which is like the most important piece of this whole thing, but also pull all the levers in the game mechanisms and see if anything is working incorrectly.
Got it.
And then some of those people will get to take on the first 2 systems in the game, systems 1 and 2. Those don't have spoilers in them. They have some hints at what might be going on, but they do not have spoilers. Nice. And so those folks will get to play through those and will exercise all of the systems and see what's going on.
Perfect.
And then some of those people, the people who give the really useful, helpful feedback and who are willing, because I have one guy who is one of my best testers, and he's like, I'm not doing anything that has spoilers. But the people who are willing will give the full enchilada to and let them crank through the rest of it. And so that's a commitment that they are making, both in their time but also in their spoiler. That's gonna spoil the game for them.
Right.
So we're really close to done with artwork, and testing is actually a challenge. That the artwork in this game is integral to the game. So you will get an encounter card that you look at, and the illustration on the card is telling you something.
Really?
So it's not just an illustration for flavor. There's more going on. The core mechanism of the game is that you have these different skills that you might choose to use with some of these encounters,
Right.
and which ones may or may not be good ideas can be often inferred from the illustration, or at least hinted at by the illustrations. So
This is great.
That full kind of integration of the game mechanics and the artwork and the aesthetic is what John really wanted to do.
Yeah.
To the point that he did his own maps. The maps are all drawn by John.
Uh-huh. This is great.
Yeah, it's going to be phenomenal. So I'm really excited about that. And then the other part of testing that is I'm actually making physical kits for a bunch of people. So people internal to GMT and some of our testers, I've got to make physical copies because usually we just ask our testers to put those together, and they are lo-fi. They're whatever, they tape sheets of paper together, but we can't do that for this game because we're doing a bunch of stuff that we hadn't done before. Like, have you played Gloomhaven at all? Have you ever played Gloomhaven?
I have it, and I was going through the instruction, like the free play. And then my son didn't. I was hoping my son would like it with me because I like the idea that the cards have like
you have to pick
two
one.
powers, right? And then he turned out to be way more of a pure role player, and it just kind of slid to the side.
Yeah, yes. Okay. Well, hey, but I mean, then you get role play, right? So that
right. Oh, I've been doing tons and tons of role play.
Excellent. Love hearing that. Well, Gloomhaven has these maps you got to build, and they have tiles, and digging the tiles out and putting them together. It's a pain. Yes. It's like one of the major complaints. So the company Cephalofair did a book.
Yes, the lion. Book. It's the lion.
Jaws of the Lion.
Yes,
Jaws of the Lion.
Because I bought that too. Yes.
So I played through Jaws of the Lion with my group, and I was struck that this spiral bound book was a really good idea. And so we actually decided to do that for the maps in Away Team. And so when you open the box, you're going to get a spiral bound book that's going to have all of your maps in it. And when you need to go explore a planet, instead of picking up a stack of, 20 or 10 card stock maps and then flipping through to find the one that you need, and they would be double-sided, so you'd have to flip them over.
Yep.
You can look at the table of contents on the front of this book, and it'll say, oh, it's page 9, and you go there and you're playing. So we want to test all of that out and make sure that everything works exactly the way that we expect it to. That the components are all fit perfectly, that there's never overstacking in spaces, that that all of the physical component interactions. What is Redmond Simonson came up with? Physical systems design, is that the term? But that all works the way that we expect it to.
Right.
And we do that for all our games, but often we do that at the end. Like, so one of the last things that we do after gameplay is all fitted, we go to art. And then as the art is coming back from the artist, I'm printing it and looking at it and putting pieces on it and actually playing, making sure you can read it from across the table. So Red Dust Rebellion was played on a physical kit a lot, specifically to make sure that we didn't have this problem. Well, Away Team's going to start that process way earlier because we want to make sure that all of those pieces are integrated in the design much earlier.
I love it. Yeah, those big spiral books where you can just turn and there it is. Your setup is just almost, it's just, do you have the book on the table?
Yeah.
Flip to the page.
Yeah.
Love it.
I mean, spiral books are something that we've been able to do, but the applications for that have been too niche for us or not needed. But we had two things come up right at the same time that could use them. This is one. The other is Fields of Fire Deluxe. So Fields of Fire Deluxe just is at the printer now. We're approving proofs as we speak.
Nice.
And the rule book for that is 96 pages.
Hmm.
So it's a series rule book. It's 96 pages. It's, to actually play the game, you don't need 96 pages. Some of that's urban combat rules, vehicle rules, stuff that doesn't come up in Normandy 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's a little bit of, we'll talk a little bit about this. Actually, I'd love to talk a little bit about this. There's some
Sure.
programmed instruction that we built into it now so that you don't have to learn 96 pages of rules to play. But that booklet is too big for our standard fold it in half and stitch it down the middle approach, right?
Hmm.
So instead, we were going to use it perfect bound, like a paperback book. And I was at Origins, and somebody opened up a box, and I'm not going to say what game it was, and they pulled the book out, the rule book out, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, this is awful." And I turn around and look, and they can't get it to lay flat, and it was a perfect bound book, and I went, "Oh no, we can't do that." And so we switched it to spiral bound because that way you can just open it and lay it flat.
Yep.
And when we I was actually our art director, Justin Martinez, who suggested that. And as soon as he said that, I went, yes, we should spiral bound that. That makes so much sense. So that's been the thing that we've been kind of moving towards, is thinking about how are people actually going to lay this on the table? How are they going to pull the game out and set it out? And for a away team, there's a lot of thought that goes into that. And in Fields of Fire, there's a lot of thought that goes into that. And there's really no substitute for just putting it on the table and saying, what are people actually going to do? And especially watching people play it. It's good. It's good for me to test it. It's better if I can watch somebody else play it.
Yeah. How hard is that when you just hand it to them? Because you're right. That's the secret sauce. You hand it to them and you're watching how difficult is it. Oh my gosh. Them? Yeah.
I have to put a piece of duct tape over my mouth. Like, I cannot shut up. So obviously I can't shut up, but yes, I gotta, like, the best for me, I've done a couple sessions where I've mailed people playtest kits, and then I've said, okay, call me on FaceTime, put your phone on a tripod, and mute me.
Yes.
And I'm just going to watch. Right. And they sit and play, and I watch for an hour or so, and I write down notes, and I'll get, in an hour of watching somebody play, I'll pick up usually 3 or 4 major things and like 1 or 2 minor things that we want to deal with. And then we rinse and repeat until I don't. Yeah. And, again, without letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, you're never going to perfectly solve everything. I remember watching people play Red Dust Rebellion and saying, man, flipping those cylinders back and forth from active to underground is really fiddly. But I can't fix that. That's baked into the coin series at this point. Right. And so again, but I'm learning and I'm thinking about how would I do this differently next time? Because what we have isn't bad. The question is, could it be better?
Got it.
Yeah. So, and then, I said I wanted to talk about Fields of Fire Deluxe. So
do it.
Man, that game has been a beast, but I think we have it tamed. Yeah. And I think that it is, I think that it's at a place where we feel really good about what players are going to get. I think that the team, so for Fields of Fire Deluxe, the team that we put together is Andrew Stead and Colin Parsons, who were super fans of Fields of Fire. You can go back on Board Game Geek and they're answering questions, years ago. And then Ben, who's obviously the designer, is still very, very involved in this project. And that project started a couple of years ago with me reaching out to people and saying, I need help compiling all of the rules questions and corner cases and confusion that has happened with this game and any errata that anybody has found. And Andrew and Colin were my 2 superstars. And so at some point, I just said, can I hand this to you guys? And they were like, yes. So that's been super satisfying watching them learn the craft of game development and do it at a very high level. And the way they interact with people, they are so kind. People will ask them questions that have clearly been answered, and they are patient and they are willing to engage with people where they're at. People will come to them with questions and say, hey, I have a 1st edition rule book and I'm wondering about this thing. And they don't scream and say, how dare you ask me a question from the 1st edition? They are gentle and redirect. Hey, have you seen the new 3rd edition rules? They probably are going to be much clearer. And then the biggest thing they did, which this was Ben's idea, Ben, and actually Mike Berticelli was involved in this too. We all wanted to put together a starter guide. So a boot camp. So you open Fields of Fire, and you've never played it before. It's an intimidating game. It's big.
Yes.
It's complex. It's got a 96-page rule book. So how do we get people into it? And Andrew and Colin and Ben sat down, and I think Ben put together the first edition of this book. They built a starter mission. And that mission was just kind of stripped down with much less in it. And the idea was that you could play knowing a subset of the rules. Well, when we put that in front of testers, it turned out that they still needed to learn too many rules. Like, it was a subset of the rules, but those rules were spread all over the rule book, right? And so we wanted to strip that down even more. And so they put together 2 training courses, like assault courses, that you run through, just like you were at boot camp. And one of them is at the platoon level, and one is at the company level. And so the platoon level, you have 1 platoon in your squads, and that's it. You're 3 squads, and that's what you have. And you have an objective to maneuver them to a place, and it walks you step by step through how actions actually work, how to flip a card and check how many actions you have, how you use those, how communication works, and it's all in the field manual. So you don't even have to pick the rule book up.
This is perfect, because that's I have the original, but it was, and I always was hearing, it's, if you can get through, it's magical, it's awesome, and I'd be like, and then I would kind of be like, I can't do this now, just because it was such a commitment. And then I'd heard that you were going to have that programmed instruction. I thought, well, that's great, just like a tutorial in a game, in a video game.
That's exactly what we're doing.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Love it.
And so, if you've played a video game and it says like, hey, go pick that thing up, and it pops up the dialogue that says move using the control stick, that's the level that we try to put this at.
Love it.
And so once you finish the platoon course, then you do a company course. So now you have all your platoons, and you're trying to do something in particular. And there's Op 4. And so you're actually fighting a little bit. So you see how fire works, and you see how VOF, volume of fire, and PDF, primary direction of fire, work, which are the 2 things that make that game really unique. And once that's done, and you kind of have worked through, okay, now this is all clicking, it makes sense, then you get to the starter mission. And that starter mission is infinitely replayable. There are people, because it is a random setup, so there are people, I bet, who buy Fields of Fire, set that starter mission up and play it, and go, that was super fun, I'm going to do it again. And they may never go to Normandy, right? They may never actually get out of just playing that starter mission. And personally, I think the game would be worth it if that's all they ever did. That's how cool I think all of the system is. So, so we really wanted to give people a ladder. We wanted them to be able to go from ground floor up to playing Normandy Mission 1, which is the simplest mission in the game. And so we built this pathway that they can walk on to get there. And I think from that point on, the game is programmatic instruction. It was always built that way. You don't get a vehicle in Normandy until you're a little farther in. Well, I guess you get a Jeep in the first mission, but you don't encounter real vehicles, enemy vehicles, anything like that until later. You don't have to deal with helicopter assaults in Normandy because they didn't happen. You don't have, you have some of the basics. And honestly, even in Normandy, things like pyrotechnics, you can beat those missions without really using pyrotechnics. They're great. They are much more helpful. But those things you can wait and do later. So we really tried to give a pathway that introduces things as you go, and then the rule book really becomes a reference. And so built the rule book to be a reference. And there's 2 field manuals. That's what we ended up calling these, are the field manuals. The first one has the assault courses in it, and the second one has the starter mission, and then a whole bunch of examples about how vehicles work. So if you've tried to play Vietnam and you have gone, man, this helicopter assault thing, it's breaking my brain, we got you. We cleaned it up. Yeah, it's gonna be a blast.
Yeah, because that's the problem. I mean, you and I both referenced it. There's so many things I have going on that a lot of times, I'm just going to be honest, my failure will come in. I'll be like, I want to do this, and I'm hyped, and I jump in, and I've got like a window of time where I need to grok it and go. And if I miss it, all of a sudden, I'll be honest, a new game will come in or something.
I got to clear my table.
Yep, and I clear it, and then I'm thinking, well, sometimes I'll be like, well, I won't box it up yet. Let me put it on the secondary table. And that's
How many
like
games
almost
are on
like,
your secondary table?
yeah, there's too many. I mean, folks will come over and go, "Oh, this is awesome." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. Maybe it'll come back over."
Yeah.
so,
I
so that
I'm yeah,
it's perfect.
so that just happened to me. I learned I taught myself how to play Turning Point Stalingrad.
Oh,
And I've been doing a little bit of a deep dive into area impulse lately.
yeah,
And so I played Turning Point Stalingrad. I played some of Mike Grinella's area impulse games,
yep,
and I played Breakout Normandy. Those have been the ones that I've really been getting into. And so I put Turning Point Stalingrad on the table, and I got distracted. I had to go on a trip. I had to go on a work trip. And when I came back, I looked at it and I was like, I don't have the juice for this, and I put it
yeah,
away. And so maybe 2 weeks ago, I got it back out, but this time I had time to sit with it. And so I played it over like 3 days, and I played a couple turns, reset it, and then played the whole thing. And it
wow,
was way, way, way more satisfying to actually get through a game. So
that's cool.
we want that. We want to give people something that they can accomplish. And
I
so
love
they can set the game up, they can run the company course, and then even if they tear it down, they feel like they played the game instead of, which I think you're hinting at here, instead of I set it up, I looked at it, and I put it away.
right. Or I'll have, it'll just start clicking and I'm kind of moving through processes. And then you're right, something will come in. And then when I know the problem is when I come back and I go, I'm gonna have to relearn those processes.
Mm-hmm.
It's been too long. And that's usually when it'll go back in the box or something will. So I love that's where the programmed instruction is so nice because I'm a the first thing I usually do anyway is kind of set up the board, get a grip on the pieces, go to the big splash page that so that when you say you're talking about this is a supply cube, I know what the supply cube looks like.
Which, by the way, we added those. So there are component spreads now in Fields of Fire. So if you're
Love
like,
it.
man, which ones are North Korean? There's a
Perfect.
component spread. It's easier to pick it
Perfect.
out. So
Yep.
I will say the one place that this isn't quite like old programmed instruction is that we couldn't, because of the way the rules work and the way that all the systems are interconnected, they're not discrete. So you
Mm,
can't just go read the first 16 pages of the rules and then play. So if you're a person who's like, I really need to read the rules in order to make this happen, what I would recommend you do is read the company assault course,
okay.
understand what it's trying to do, and then go read the rules. And I
Got
think, that if you read the rules on movement and you read how actions work, which are chapters 4 and 6, I think,
it. Okay.
you can get what the company assault course is doing. But it's a little bit more challenging than it was to just like ambush, where it's just like read the first 12 pages and then there's a mission
Exactly.
inserted into the rules that you can
Yes.
set up and play. We couldn't figure out how to do that with this. So
Got it.
we did our best, and I hope that it does really well. The testers who have played these missions have said they are really helpful. And obviously
Cool.
we've posted all of this stuff on our website.
Yep.
So final versions of all of this are going to go up. We're going to actually build a dedicated support site on the GMT Games website. So we will always have the latest edition of all of these materials up for people to use. And you don't even have to buy a new version of the game. If you don't want to pay for it, you can
Mm,
just download the PDFs and play.
got it. No, you're right. And it's amazing that Ambush, way back with Victory Games, again, a Butterfield game, got that right. Because you're right. I was 13 or 14 when that came out. And that level of you just need to know this and then play. And you've got the slider in the cartridge thing down a little bit and when to go to the next condition. And then boom and boom. And it was just, and then, yeah. And then coming back, box it. You only had 8 missions, but, box it and come back later. Hey, Mike had a
Box it, put it away for 5 years, and
yeah,
then forget
exactly.
everything. So you
And
play
then
it
they're
again.
like, I
Yeah,
think there's a sniper over here, but I can't
right.
remember
Not sure.
exactly where. So Mike says that's how Harold Buchanan and I handle liberty or death. We watched multiple games trying to keep our mouth shut.
Well,
Yes.
okay, so I learned that from Mike. So no shock that he did it first. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember working on Tank Duel with Mike, and we would play at the warehouse, and he would not play. He would sit on
Mm,
the end of the table, and so I'd be playing. I'd teach the game. He would watch me teach the game because I was Johnny come lately to that. So one of the
God.
really cool things that you don't get very often is that you as a designer get to watch somebody else teach your game.
Yes.
Um, and so when Sam London taught me Microverse at San Diego Historical Convention, I taught it to Gene and Rachel the next morning. And so I sat down and I taught the whole game, and Sam watched me teach the whole thing.
Mm.
And I get to the end and I go, okay, how'd I do? And Sam goes, you did great, except everything was wrong. So
See,
it's
I've
very
had that intimidation where you recognize the designer coming over to your table,
I
and
know.
I'll
I hope
usually
I'm not
say,
screwing up.
yeah, I'll say, tell me when I do something wrong. And they're like, nope, you just do your thing. And yeah. So,
But if you ever, I mean, if you're a designer and you want to know what parts of the game are people going to get stuck on,
yep,
watch somebody try to teach it.
yep. Early on, so I was at a con, I was with the Dice Tower, and I was doing most of their military game stuff that Tom just either said, hey, why don't you do it, or I don't have time to do that. But I had a designer come over at a con and say, I want to show you this game. And when we went over, he was like walking me through and teaching, and I was noticing already like that's confusing even as you're teaching. And it was rough to learn that way because he
Right.
was so knowledgeable that I was missing things.
Yep.
And then when I got home to go over it, I had to like relearn it, and I'd asked Tom about it. I go, this seems odd. I thought it would be like an easy button. And he goes, nope. One of the things Tom liked to do is don't tell me how this plays, because I want to also evaluate how you're teaching me to play. And
It's really good. That's a
yeah,
really smart insight.
yeah,
I think, I spend a lot of time looking at games and asking myself, as a designer, when I play Twilight Struggle South Asia, which is the game that I'm working on with Jason Matthews,
right.
what am I forgetting to do? Because if
Mm,
I'm forgetting to do it, the players are definitely going to forget it. And so
sure.
we had a version of the game where you had Chinese influence that got put on the board, because the game is set 50s through 70s in South Asia. So China's obviously like a pretty important player in that world,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we're fishing for a model that has them as more than a regular country, but less than a superpower. And so
Mm,
one of the ideas we experimented with was putting this Chinese influence on the map. Well, we just kept forgetting to do it. Like it was in the sequence of play, and we would follow the sequence of play, and we would still miss it.
mm,
So that made us think maybe this isn't a good idea.
okay.
And so we've we've landed on a different approach, which is I think a lot better. But that kind of, I'm, as the designer, forgetting to do something is
Sure.
a really big red flag that should make you go, maybe I need a different mechanic here. Maybe I need a mnemonic. Maybe I need reminders for the players that I'm not giving them, or something like that. But usually streamline it out, because
Mm.
they're going to forget it anyway, you know? So
Let's see. We've got Never Fears on a lot. He says he's super late, but he'll watch the video later. You bet Never Fear. Never Fear's usually on a lot. We had real quick. Multi Alti is a test. It means he's a super fan of my other show, Scotch Test Dummies. So that's my little tagline when we're testing different whiskeys. I've got a beautiful Paul John Indian whiskey. They usually
nice.
send us, yeah, they send us their Christmas versions usually. But let's see. So I can tell you right off the bat, away team, my interview, an hour-long interview with John, still is ticking up views all the time. It's amazing how people are going and watching that interview with him. And that was, heck, that might have been a year ago, and I'll still see it trend up in my own little stats. So,
Yeah,
um,
we're getting there, man. We are close to the final push for that. It's just we have a couple super play testers. David Kurtz is one of them, who are through the whole game basically. And
nice.
for those who don't know, that game is being written by multiple people. We wanted a bunch of different writers. So that writers room is John, Kai's in there, Doug Sun did some writing for us. Greg Kostikian is doing writing for us. He did Creature Who Ate Sheboygan. So
Nice.
we are very blessed with the people who are working on that. But writing takes time,
Yep.
and so we are really trying to make sure that we do the due diligence that we need. As far as that game is paragraph driven, so it's a little bit like Ambush in that
Yep.
regard. And people who have been around the block with Ambush know that the paragraph references are super critical. And so in
Huge.
order to make sure that we didn't screw that up, everything is built in a database, and those paragraph references are dynamically generated. So
Wow.
our testers are going to be checking that, but we hired a database admin to do the work to make sure that those were all correct.
Beautiful.
So there's a lot that has gone into making sure that that's right. So we are going to test it, and that is very important. But we get to do it in a way that is a verification, not checking every single individual thing.
Hmm.
And that's going to be a lot easier for the team to do, and it's going to mean that we're looking at printing that next year, not the year after. So
Yeah.
we're really excited about that. You mentioned your whiskeys, right? I got to
Yes.
get in on that. So I've
What
got
do
a
you got?
bottle of Basil Hayden on my
Oh
desk.
yeah.
Just nice
Oh,
sipper. I mean, I love the cask strength stuff. Don't get me wrong.
oh no, you're good.
Apple
Basil
Ravenna
is
is
good.
probably my favorite, but
We
this is great for just end of the day, have a sipper and not blow my head off with proof.
we made somebody mad there in their marketing department early on. I don't know when early on their bottles not only had that big UF or the WWE belt.
Right,
You can see the belt.
right there
Yeah.
in the
It
middle.
also used to have this paper, like it almost looked like a monk's habit or something that was over. I don't know. It was
Oh,
like this.
yeah, I remember that.
And it was funny because I was just riffing and I argued that it made it hard to grip the bottle because this paper was in the way. And I'm going on, and my co-host on that rips it off and throws it over on the deal. And he's like, just quit talking about it. Well, like somebody there, they later came back later and said, sorry, they were like, we worked real hard on the marketing for that. And it was funny because we always reply back, especially something snarky. We're like, well, when we finish the bottle, we're actually going to recycle that and throw the whole thing in the recycle bin. So I don't know why you're being so precious about the
That's
paper. And then
amazing.
later, yeah, he was like, man, I was having a bad week. I apologize. But yeah, because it was all designed to get your attention, which I know they have to do, just like you guys have to do. You got to get the
Absolutely.
attention when it's on the shelf.
It matters. It
Yeah.
matters.
And so they had that paper habit or smock or whatever it was, and it just drove me crazy. But yeah, that's a perfect summer sipper because you can
Absolutely.
throw some cubes in it, just pour that in and just sip on it. Like this one,
Yeah.
Paul John's is real spicy. It's a perfect, it feels like Christmas. So
Yeah.
my problem is it was so low, I finally thought it's called a heel sleigh. When it gets down to the bottom, you just got to say, let's get that bottle out of here.
Get a buddy over here and kill it, man.
Yes.
Can't hang out.
That's exactly.
So I did that, and then last summer I went hung out with a friend of mine. Actually, it was last February. Who has an infinity bottle that he does,
Sure.
and so I was like, oh, I'm absolutely in on this. So I bought a bottle of bourbon that I like, and I use that as my base, and so I've been doing that as well, which has been great. I think we talked about this last time. I'm a little more of a rye drinker than a bourbon drinker. So I think Mike says he likes that Pendleton 1910. That's a good sip too. I'm a big fan of that.
Yep. And it was funny because I came as more, and I'm still favor scotches more. And then for American whiskeys, I was getting into rye as well, just because you'll get those peppery punches. It's just a lot more kind of rough and tough and in your face.
Yeah.
And then bourbon kicked in for me when it was Elijah Craig's Barrel Proof, which I only put out 3 times a year. And I call it the bottle of wow. Scott, my co-host, had it. We were just sampling before because we'll sample stuff as it comes in and then decide where it's going to land for show stuff.
Sure.
And I just kept saying, wow. I mean, we're not filming or anything. And I'm like, this thing is just awesome.
Love when that happens, right?
Oh, and
that's the best.
Yeah, it brought in, because a lot of the bourbon's huge, where there's channels that just do bourbon. But bourbon can get a little samey for me just because they have to use that virgin barrel. And so their rye mash bills are where they come in. And I found out I actually even like the rye mash bill bourbons that have a little more rye.
Yeah, high rye bourbon tends to be where I land anyway. So well, I know that we're getting close to the end of time. I wanted to ask you a question. What's been on your table? What have you been enjoying?
Got it. So let's see. So first of all, there's been a bit of a takeover in my world with role-playing games, I have to admit. So Rebel Fury, I'm excited. I had it out on the table, and I was starting to play around with it, just because there's even the solitaire scenario.
Fredericksburg is solitaire. Yep.
So that is nice. And I had the original Gettysburg, which was in the
C3I.
The magazine, along with Waterloo. So I was familiar with the system. So I love it. It's kind of weird for me. I'm just at this point where I got about 4 more years before I can retire, and I'm burning it at both ends, which is totally fine. but I'll run into these crunch times, and if I can't get it in, it cycles out. And then on the World War II side, this company put out their War Stories role playing game. It's called Firelock Games, and it
Nice.
it uses Free League is a company out of Sweden that does RPGs. They're really good, great production value. They have their own dice system, Mutant Year Zero, where you basically have skills and attributes. Will give you a number of dice you're going to roll, and then you're only looking for sixes. I find that a little bit. It's not nearly as fun as like adding it in, or the 20-sided die can give you those moments of exhilaration, but
Yeah.
it's really simple. I mean, you're not doing math, you're rolling 10, 12 dice, so hopefully, or four, and hoping to get sixes. And then there's a push mechanic. If you don't get a six, you can push it. And every different system they have, the push does something that is harmful to you or adds stress
Nice.
to you or something. So, and then you can have difficulty. If it's real easy, you only need 1 6. If it's something super hard, you may need 3. So they can play it. But this is a different company grabbing that Free League system of the Mutant Year Zero. So RPGs have really kind of grabbed onto me. And then off that, why SpaceX, just the launches. There's a guy, I think his last name is House. I watch his YouTube show. He's an Australian guy that just
Nice.
breaks down. God, I've
I
been
love
just
watching that stuff.
yes,
It
I've
just
been
gets me every
nerding
time.
out the way they're building their tower, their launch tower 2, Starship. The 5th launch is supposed to be within 3 weeks, and I'm just it's weird. I was never really a rocket guy, but I think when SpaceX started landing them and talking about the iteration of reuse and being able to 3D print things and move quicker, it was funny because it almost hit me on a game level side where it's like
Mm.
you can see how they're almost like building an engine and I don't I mean building that game engine where you get it iterating, and it felt a little bit like that to me as well. But so those are some of the weird off-topic things. Is SpaceX? I should know his name. I always just go to his channel. He doesn't just cover SpaceX; he covers anything in the space, launch thing that's going on. So, but that's
Very
been
cool.
grabbing me lately. Whiskey wise, I'll give you something if you see it out there. Oh shoot, now I'm going to forget the name of it. It's an Irish whiskey. Oh my goodness. It's where they make glass. It's where all the glassware comes from, and I don't have the bottle in here. I'd look at it. Oh, it's going to kill me. We actually went out in 2019. They flew us out to film there. I'm hoping the name just pops in as I'm stressing over the name. But
You put
they,
yourself on the spot. You shouldn't
I
have done
totally
that.
did. I totally did. And oh God, I'm going to block. But they their main deal is they've isolated out the different farms and the different grains, the barleys that are coming from these farms, so that they can get that terroir that
Yeah.
comes from a particular grain or a particular field or a style, a biodynamic field, just a different strains of barley. So that's been really interesting. And I will throw it in the comments later what the name is because I am blanking on it. But I'll throw that out there. Those are really good. I think they'll sooner or later have a bottle that blows up. Right now, people are kind of passing on it, but I think they're hitting maybe 10 years, 8 years of production. And that's as far as a good Irish whiskey goes. They really need a few more years to kind of get those.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what else have you been doing non-game related?
I'll try to run that same line of stuff here. So let's see.
Yeah.
So game wise, I've been playing role playing game wise. Dungeon World has been
Sure.
something that's been interesting for me. That system's like a little bit of a twist on the fantasy RPG. I think the coolest part is the way that it really emphasizes the relationships between the characters. So you have bonds with other characters, which kind of one of your things that you're trying to accomplish in a session is related to those bonds, and so you fulfill them and then create new ones with companions after you mission together. So it feels like it kind of solves a little bit of that like four people meet in a tavern kind of thing. There's a pre-existing relationship among these people, and you're exploring what the implications of that might be as you play.
Yeah.
So for fantasy role playing, that's really awesome. And I've always been a big fan of Fiasco. So
Yeah.
that's like on that board game role playing
Yeah.
game line, and I've had a couple opportunities to play that this last year that I've really enjoyed. Um, on the board gaming side, most of my board gaming is playtesting, but I got an advanced copy of I Napoleon from Ted Racer, and I
Right.
have been cranking on that game. So it's a little bit more of a narrative solo experience. It's not the game that has thousands of real meaty, meaningful choices, but the choices are there. It's kind of like Jerry White's Enemy Coast Ahead games. You have to know the whole game before you can start to make intelligent choices at the beginning. So
Mm,
it feels like a lot of random choices until you really understand what the implications are going to be.
cool.
So I've been enjoying that. With my kids, we've been playing the game they always want to play. The game, if they could play any game, it would be Return to Dark Tower,
Oh, really?
which is Restoration Games. That
Yes.
1980s Dark Tower game. Well, they redid it, and
Yep.
it's got a 24-inch tower that sits in the middle of the table that's powered by a tablet, and it like spins around and shoots skulls out of it. But it's not a gimmick. That is a really good game. It is
Mm,
super satisfying, cooperative game. I can play it with my 10 and my 8-year-old, and if they don't fully get the strategy, that's okay because it's cooperative.
okay.
Um, so super fun. Yeah, they just have a blast with it. It's got a little bit of toy factor, and it's a fun game. I don't mind playing it, so that's fun. Um, the other thing is I got into Star Wars Unlimited, which is the new Star Wars collectible card game.
Yeah, I saw that.
Um, super well designed. I mean, really fun.
Mm,
The it's only on its second set, and for collectible card games, it can take 3, 4, 5 sets to get the card pool big enough for it to be really fun. But they managed out of the gate to create a pretty interesting meta game.
cool.
And the second set really it kind of blossomed a little bit,
Mm,
and so that's been fun. But what's been way more fun is the way that the deck building in that game works. Makes play for draft and sealed at your game store really, really easy to get into and very, very fun. And so I
mm,
actually go every Monday night to my game store and play, which I haven't done before. And that's awesome. It's
that's
great to have a
cool.
community of people and to connect and to be part of something that's going on a
Yeah,
regular basis. And so I've met some gamers, I've gotten to connect with them, and we've had just a really good time playing games with each other. So
perfect. Yeah, because
um,
I picked up Fantasy Flights. Now it's Studio, I think, but their role playing game where they use it's like the tier system where
right.
you're working through the boxes of experience or whatever. So
Yeah. Yeah, they've been doing some really interesting and good stuff over there. So that's been my tabletop gaming. I went and hung out with Gene, and he showed me his gaming right now is he's been really into Slay the Spire, and not video gaming. So it's a card game, but it's a video game, and the cards that's fun when you can take something that's tabletop and put it digital like that, and then use the unique things that digital gaming can do. So the
right.
values on the cards dynamically change.
Mm,
The cards are coming in and out of your hand, and it's a lot of fun.
mm,
So I've been playing that quite a bit in my downtime. And then as far as what I've been enjoying whiskey wise, my brother is actually a huge bourbon drinker, and
okay.
I had never really gone down the bourbon rabbit hole. So I called him and said, "Hey, give me a couple bottles to go get." And of course, he tells me all the stuff I can't find. So
Yeah,
because it's
all
really hard to find
allocated.
stuff right now, right? Yeah. But I went to my store and I found that they had a couple bottles of Buffalo Trace
Sure.
and a bottle of Traveler, and so
Mm,
those have been interesting to taste and to get into it. Honestly, my big find this last year. This tells you how much of a bourbon newbie I have been. Is just Woodford Reserve. Like I had
yeah,
never sat down and just had and I was actually quite impressed. I got the double oaked, super nice bottle. I really
yeah,
enjoyed that.
it's good.
But yeah, but my big surprise, and this one you will probably make fun of, and that's okay.
No, no, no.
But my mom showed up at my house, and she was like, "Hey, so this celebrity that I follow has a Scotch whiskey, and I want you to try it." And I was like, "Oh no." oh no, what are we gonna get? And she bought me a bottle of Sassenach,
Oh,
and I have been pleasantly surprised for a blended Scotch whiskey.
yeah,
There is a lot more depth in that bottle than I expected. I'm not saying it's worth the price tag, and I'm not saying it's a
sure.
good bottle, but I have actually enjoyed drinking it.
Yeah.
So that
Well,
hey, what
well,
more
there's
can
a
you really
beauty.
ask for, right?
The skill level with distilling is so good that it's really rare you just get some bottle that's horrible. I mean,
Right,
usually
right.
the key is they're hitting a middle standard. And then when you start to hit things, or it's what your palate likes. We always say, because people get hung up on the rules, or I've been at places where I was looking for a bottle and some guy in a suit yelling, "What you want is Pappy." I'm like, well, this guy knows the name. But I
Right,
mean, I'm like, well, no, I'm
right.
looking for something from a Bunnahabhain distillery that their website shows is in this store. It's very specific
Sure.
what I'm here. Yeah, it was, and he's yelling, just get you some Pappy. And I'm like, oh, God.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to give you a mom story, which is funny. Um, First, not the funny part. My stepdad's 92 now. He fell down the stairs and it was injured.
Not funny.
So
Yeah.
he was in the hospital. She was stressed. All the extended families coming in. That's just more stress, especially when it's on top of stress. And it was funny because he said, "Hey, I want you to come by and visit me in the hospital, just you." I did. He said, "You need to spend more time with your mom." I think with just my family being around, it's been even extra stressful for her. So I was like, okay, fine. I met with mom. We're talking, and she starts telling me stories about when she was 10. She lived in the Chicago suburb, and Freedom was her bicycle in the 50s. And it hit me. I'll mention Free League again. They have a role playing game called Tales from the Loop, which was also on Prime as a TV show, and a little bit slow roll on the TV show. But it's all about kids in the 80s, an alternative 80s that adventure and have mysteries. And I'd mentioned to her, just because gaming, whether it's role playing or board gaming, allows you to have a mechanism for your time together that is, by the nature of the game, is in a scheduled, format. And I said, she's 81. So I was like, would you be interested in doing this? She goes, that sounds really interesting. I thought, well, give it a try. My wife said, I don't know if this will work. I said, if it doesn't work, we've spent a couple hours together. She loved it. She's almost like a journaler where she was calling me when she wasn't, when I was at work, saying, I'm thinking of the character I created. And we've been playing, weekly, just so much so that when my sister came to visit, she was like, can we work her into a game? I'm like, yes, we can do this.
I
So
love it.
mom is loving, and Tales from the Loop, what was so perfect about it is it's a light role playing game. So it's got the mechanism around it using those same mutant year zero dice, but like the kids, you're playing kids from 10 to 15, they can't die. They can only have a lot of stress and broken. So that's been, quite honestly, I didn't expect it. And it's been a really interesting way for us to meet, because she used to meet in terms of us hanging out together. She would come over. She liked some board games, but you're going to recognize what my problem is. She would come over and I would hit her with a new rule set every month.
Yeah.
And because I'm excited about whatever's on the table, and she'd go, I don't get that. It's worker placement, or whatever. And she'd be like, I don't. Can we play the other one? I'm like, no, that's the one's downstairs.
I'm over. That's done. I've put
Yeah,
that away. It's on the second table now.
yeah. And she finally told me once. She goes, I like games, but couldn't we just play the same game that you taught me? And it was just, sometimes I wouldn't even have it anymore. I would have
Yeah.
moved it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I tell
this
people
was
my favorite game is the one I haven't played yet.
right.
And so, it's a disease.
Yes. Yes. Just learning the new thing and how does it tweak the thing. And it was too much for her. So this has been it's just been really nice. That's been a nice little surprise.
Sounds awesome. That
Yeah.
sounds really lovely.
She was
Sounds really
calling me
lovely.
today. Could she come over today? I said, no, I'm doing that. I'm with Jason today. I go, Monday. Can you come over? Yes, she'll come over. So, it's
Love
like
it.
I've got this gaming friend, but it's mom, and she's 81, and she's so into her 14-year-old character. I mean, it's just been great.
It's
So
awesome. What a blessing. What a blessing.
yeah,
I love
it's
it.
been
I
just
love it.
wonderful. So, well, thank you for coming on. I know you got stuff. I'm sure I've got to go out and
Absolutely.
mow.
Mow your grass.
So, all right. If you've ever got anything you want to come on, reach out again. I love having you on. I could talk to you off screen for
Same.
hours.
Same.
All right, brother. All right, see you,
All
man.
right.
Thanks
Till
to you,
next
and
time.
thanks to everybody else. And there's Mike's comment. We even talked, High Frontier 4. Boy, is that a difficult. That is a real space game. But very cool too. All right, see you guys. See you,
Thanks.
Jason. All right, I'm gonna end now. We'll wind this